Congressman Levin, you know, you can say, well, that's just the Republican majority on Ways and Means, but the Treasury Department Inspector General did a report that came out last May, and he found that conservative groups seeking tax-exempt status were treated very differently from liberal groups. Let's put up his findings. 30% of organizations with progress or progressive in their names were examined as possible political groups and therefore not included, would not have been considered for tax-exempt status. But 100% of groups with Tea Party, Patriot, or 912 in their names were examined. Congressman Levin, 248 conservative groups were examined, but only 29 liberal groups. How do you explain that disparity?
Well, first of all, the Inspector General left out the information in his report that there were liberal groups. But let me try to explain what's happening here. You know, the document that we were given to look over, it said this on the top. The following document contains confidential tax reform information and is being provided to you for review. Any subsequent unauthorized disclosure of its content is prohibited by law and is punishable by fine or imprisonment. So what happens is the chairman gives us the material. We can look at it for one day, take no notes, and then we go into executive session and we violate the confidentiality of the taxpayers'
Congressman
records.
Levin, with all due respect, it's a very interesting answer, but it has nothing to do with my question. I'm asking you a specific question.
It does.
No, it doesn't, sir. I'm asking you a specific question. How do you explain the fact that 30% of progressive groups were examined for their tax-exempt status eligibility and 100% of conservative groups? How do you explain that?
I'll explain it. It also does what I said, respond to your question as to what's going on here. More Tea Party groups and conservative groups apply for 501c4 status than other groups. In 2006, of the 501c4 organizations, only $1 million was spent on election campaign stuff. In 2012, $256 million, and two of the organizations were Koch brother organizations, and a third was Karl Rove.
But sir, it still doesn't. It still does not explain. You can say that there are more conservative groups, but it doesn't explain why 100% of conservative groups were examined and only 30% of liberal groups. It doesn't matter if it was 10 to 3. It was 100% of the conservative groups and 30% of the liberal groups. How do you explain that?
Look, this is what the Attorney General is looking into.
He's been looking into it for a year, sir.
The President called for an examination by the Attorney General. They are looking into that. We should not disrupt that by essentially having a secret session.
Well, do you think the President disrupted it when he said that there was not a smidgen of corruption? Do you think that was right for the President to say?
I'll tell you what he was talking about. The first hearing that we had, the chairman of the committee said there was a culture of corruption and administration interference. There's been zero evidence that the White House had anything to do with what happened.
The question had nothing to do. The question had nothing to do with the White House. It had to do. The question had to do whether there was any corruption, and he basically gave the IRS a clean bill of health when the investigation was still going on. But you bring up a good point, and I want to bring.
That isn't what is. Look.
That was a question that was asked by Bill O'Reilly at the Super Bowl. I watched the interview.
I know, and I heard it. The corruption charge related way back to the administration and whether they were involved in this. There was an effort by the Republicans to tie the White House to this. There was zero evidence.
Well,
the Inspector General
let me interrupt and
said there was zero evidence.
It's a